What is going on, Steeler fans? Welcome back to another episode of the Steelers Hangover. I'm Daniel, alongside with me, as always, Shannon White. Shannon, how are you doing, my man? How has your weekend been?
I had a very good weekend. I enjoyed watching the combine, and I was on the Q&A last night with uh, Jeremy Betts, and had some good discussion, and just going to have some more tonight.
Looking forward to it. Looking forward to it. It's getting to that time of year where free agency is about to start. The new year's on its way. I mean, the combine is now in the books. Free agency's first, and then it's the draft. And there's a lot of rumors and speculation going on which way every team is going to go, and what players are going to be landing where and whatnot. This year, though, the Pittsburgh Steelers seem to have quite a bit of money. Top, I think like top five or so with the amount of money that they have available to them. 200 and just shy of $280 million for the salary cap, or is where it's been increased to. But who are the Steelers going to choose? It seems like the supply and demand aspect of this, the supply might be a little bit low there. What are your thoughts on this upcoming free agency? I know that you've mentioned it has to be a big one. How important are the players that the Steelers choose, and can you value the players that you need versus the cost, given the supply and demand here might not all be there as far as the supply goes?
Yeah, the one of the problems is when the salary cap goes up, it goes up for everybody.
Yeah.
So if a team like the Steelers for years and years was always up against it, and they'd figure out a way to find an extra 12 million here, 15 million in the offseason so they could retain some of their guys. They've never been on the market much. Well, that's allowed some teams to do that this year for guys the Steelers would probably like to have. So as you say, they got cap space, but it's just like going shopping immediately after the Christmas rush. They ain't a lot to find. A lot of it's already been picked through. So I wish there was more out there.
Mm-hmm.
But I think if they're frugal and they make some, good decisions, and not put, make one big signing, this might be the offseason to make 4 or 5, medium-sized signings.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see that. I mean, none bigger position as far as signings go is going to be the wide receiver position. I think everybody's been looking at that position for some time now. Going back to this past offseason, Brandon Ayuk was a guy that everybody was looking at. There was a countdown. There was it's going to happen. I think people were just trying to predict what day it was going to drop, that it actually went official. Never did, in fact, go official. I think that the 49ers would like to have somebody take over Brandon Ayuk's contract. I doubt that's going to happen this season, but there are some options there, and if we were to look at the wide receiver position in particular, let's start off with who's at the top according to Sport Track. So according to Sport Track, when you look at the wide receiver position, their first list of players are Stephon Diggs, 31, will be 32 this upcoming year, and he is last year I think he's averaging about 22 million. I think is what he's been averaging. I doubt he'll get that going forward, especially coming off of an injury to his leg. You have Keenan Allen, Amari Cooper, and Chris Godwin. Out of those guys, the only person that's under 30 is Chris Godwin. Where would you who do you want to see in the black and gold out of those options? Who would you have the most trust that could not only be productive but also be productive for 17 games of a regular season and hopefully further on?
Well, we was talking a little bit prior. Everybody, Deebo Samuels goes to the Washington for a 5th rounder.
Mm-hmm.
But I wanted him 2 years ago. Last 2 years, he's been injured. He's lost a lot of burst. He's not the same player. That's why the Niners let him walk or traded him. You've got Ayuk coming off the injury. You got Cooper Kupp a couple of years removed from his best football. You got Deshaunte Adams. It's not as good as he used to be, and he just follows Rodgers everywhere. So, I mean, a lot of these guys, you're guys I wouldn't be interested in trading for anymore because the cost is going to be too high.
Mm-hmm.
I want the Steelers to get more talented, but hopefully younger. The teams that look like they're going to have future success, the Packers have got a ton of talent, and they're the youngest team in professional football.
Mm-hmm.
That is a great combination. And I want the Steelers to focus on, you can have your veterans here and there scattered throughout, but you want to have a nucleus that can grow together. Think of the 74 Steelers. I know a lot of the people wasn't around then, but they, it wasn't free agency back then, but they had such a great draft for a few years, and that is what just sealed the nucleus. And they had that young group that grew up together in the 70s. So I don't want Stephon Diggs because, in my opinion, Diggs, he was a problem child in Buffalo, playing with Josh Allen, playing for McDermott, a good head coach, a great fan base. The guy's a problem.
Right.
Stay away from him. You have Cooper. Cooper's never been a problem. He's a hard worker, good player. Again, maybe a year or two past his prime. In my opinion, the guy you mentioned, I think you said Keenan Allen. Keenan Allen is definitely past his prime. He's always been a guy that got by without blazing speed, and he is a savvy veteran. But I just don't want to give up too much for him. We'll have to see what what it'll take to sign him. But I like Godwin.
Yeah, I think out of those, Godwin's probably your number one guy.
Is he 28?
He's Godwin's 29. He's 29. So
maybe I think of last year. But I just think that the injury was really unfortunate because he was developing a good chemistry with Mayfield. And, then he got tackled there at the end of that Ravens game.
Yeah.
And it got hurt. But no, I like him. And he's a real professional. And as you say, the Steelers are going to have to double dip at least one free agent and at least one draft player. Yeah. So, but so far right now, Godwin's leading my group.
I think so too. I mean, those would probably be your guys that you can consider maybe potentially being that wide receiver one. The rest of the guys that are on this list are probably closer to the wide receiver two. And let's just look at guys, as you mentioned, getting younger. Let's look at guys that are under 30. So you have Deontay Johnson. I think maybe he's the only guy that's probably left on here that could be a one, but I don't think there's any chance that he's ever coming back. Yeah. So you have Deontay, then you have Marquise Brown, Darius Slayton, he's a little bit popular in the chat right now. He's also there. KJ Osborne. Let's see. DJ Clark, Ashton Doolin, and we're getting into some names of people I'm probably not familiar with. Elijah Moore, he's on here. Yeah, I mean, that's probably where we're at. Rondell Moore, he's 24. So that second group of guys, I think everybody's kind of leaning in on Darius Slayton in the chat. After Godwin, I think that's probably my next step there too. Is Slayton? Where do you think? Where would you go after this? You think Hollywood Brown? I see you wanting to say Hollywood Brown so bad.
Yeah. No. I think we already got a guy that's kind of like Hollywood Brown. Yeah. But they both stay perpetually injured. Yeah. Darius Slay is the big question mark. People talked about him last trade deadline. And he's never played with a top level quarterback in a top offense. Not saying he'll have one in Pittsburgh. There's a lot of unknowns. But what I'm saying is he has potential. And as you say, or somebody put on there, he's 28. So that's a good age. Should be in his prime or coming into his prime. Out of that second group, he's the only guy that, made my meter go up a little bit. Because I do think there's untapped potential there that maybe the Steelers in the right situation could help him, meet his full potential.
Yeah.
But I'm really wanting them to focus mainly in the draft because I think there's a couple of guys there that if they could get, that could really develop into a true number one down the line.
Yeah, and well, yes, I agree, and they're definitely going to have to address this position. George Pickens is a guy that I think the Steelers want him to mature. They want him to be that guy. I'm not certain he's going to get there. And there's some troubling reports about Roman Wilson here recently. I think it was maybe Mark Caboli. I apologize if I was wrong, but I'm pretty sure it was him who mentioned something to the effect that the Steelers were never confident in Roman Wilson last season, that he knew the playbook basically well enough to get on the field. How concerning is that to you? Because I find it concerning, not necessarily on the players' side of things, but on the offensive coordinator and on the game plan, or on the game planner, to design a game plan that could put him a handful of plays for this guy. I mean, he's a talented player. The Steelers drafted him last year in the third round for a reason. He was healthy enough to come back last year. And, down the stretch when the receiver position was a huge question mark, and the Steelers decided to hold him off. Is it the player, or is it the offensive coordinator? Is it the coaches who are incapable of designing a game plan for a young receiver? Because I see a lot of offenses utilize young talent at the wide receiver position all day, every day, every Sunday. And the Steelers just kind of roll things out very slowly when it comes to the receiver position, outside of a few. But from what we saw from Roman, what do you think about those reports that he didn't know the playbook enough? I think you're on mute. Yeah, you're on mute, Shannon.
I'm sorry.
It's all right.
I coughed and I muted it. I don't believe that for a second. His offense in Michigan, though simplistic, was more complex than what the Steelers run. The Steelers, their wide receivers are very limited. What they're asked to do is very limited. They don't throw over the middle. They don't do, say illegal blocks or run rub routes. They don't do none of that, because if they do, they run into each other. It's a very, to me, you're really insulting your coaching from your wide receiver coach to your offensive coordinator, and trying to put that. We see red shirt seasons in the NFL, guys. There's just, when a guy gets injured and he's trying to work his way back, and he really hasn't played in the system, it has no experience in the system, that reaches a point where they're just like, we're better off going with somebody, even off the practice squad, that's practiced each week with it and against it, than we are to go with the guy that has no NFL experience at all. He had none. He didn't play a preseason game, nothing. Mm-hmm. So I think that they don't want to just say we redshirted, but that's what they did.
Well, I mean, that I understand that with Roman Wilson, but the same thing is said with Mike Williams, a guy who's a proven commodity in the NFL. He had combative catch ability. All he did for the Pittsburgh Steelers is catch the ball when the ball was thrown to him, and yet we saw other receivers out there, the Ben Ceronics of the world, out there before him, taking snaps on the offense. Van Jefferson as well, and this isn't a guy who's never taken a snap in the world. This is a guy that the Steelers were targeting in free agency to bring him in to compete for wide receiver one. And they targeted him. They didn't get him until the deadline. I get it. There's a lot of time, between there, but he's a pro athlete who, has shown some flash and shown flash with this team. And yet they still kind of rolled him out slow.
Well, if you remember, his first catch was a game winner against Washington.
Correct.
And they talked to him after the game, because they acquired him that week. And he said he had no idea what he was doing. He was running to the back pylon and Wilson hit him. I mean, that says a lot. I mean, we watched Baker Mayfield, the quarterback, get to the Rams and have to start that night on Monday Night Football, and he won the game for him.
Yeah.
Now we can get a guy in, and he has 2 or 3 days to practice, and as you say, we can't put in 5, 6 plays that he can learn. That they can try him out there if they wanted to try to use him. It just really speaks poorly of this offensive coaching staff. And I believe part of the problem is it's such a small staff. And if you have one wide receiver coach working with 6 wide receivers or 8 wide receivers, you got one. A lot of teams have multiple guys. The assistant has an assistant. And they can take a guy, and they have time to do that. Take him to the side and work with him. The Steelers don't. They have the smallest staff in the NFL. So I think that's where it shows up. I really do.
Yeah, you're making an excellent point there. You can't add to it. I mean, the size of the staff, which, as you mentioned, it being so small, you really can't hone in on certain things, especially if somebody needs it or requiring it because of the greater good of the entire team and trying to, play on a short week as the Steelers were doing very much often at the end of the season last year. So
One
yeah, I mean,
thing if you ever listen to him talk, I watch Nick Fireball and all them guys at the end of practice each day, and especially at camp, and they'll be like, well, TJ had a strain and he was working off on a side field. Now we'll see the same comments on Twitter from people at camp, say friends we know or colleagues. Correct. But what you'll hear is they had one guy working with him. He had one guy working with him. Or he was out there working out by himself. Now here's a guy that's injured that's trying to work his way back, and he's working out by himself. And then you hear you look at the scores the Steelers got for the strength and conditioning department. And I remember last year the Ravens had a guy injured, and they were showing it. It was on the NFL Network. He had like 4 or 5 guys around him. And one of them was holding the resistance bands, and another guy was, and would go get the ball and throw it back. And I mean, it's just crazy to see the difference of how the Steelers do not value that aspect of a professional sports league. I just think that that is it says so much. Anytime I hear that you see a guy off working out by himself on the side, whereas you at least should have a trainer, somebody out there if he's trying to work back from injury.
That's an amazing observation. You're absolutely right, and it does show its head. It's starting to show its head how it's the minimalization, the I guess it would be micromanagement, because I think you kind of need that if you're going to be a smaller size coaching staff. There has to be a lot of micromanagement going on. There's got to be a lot of persons taking on a lot larger roles, and I can see how it takes. And this is maybe one of the main reasons why it takes this team to go through a mini bye or a bye week before they start making adjustments, because they're just so short staffed. They can't make those adjustments. They got to worry about what they have in front of them right there and then. And I think that makes an excellent point. And with that point, we're going to take a quick break. And we'll be right back after a few words from our sponsors. For those watching us live, we're not going anywhere. For everybody else, we'll be right back. And we're back. Welcome back to the Hangover. I'm Daniel. Along with me is Shannon White. And before we get back into the conversation, I want to remind you guys to check out the website, steelcurtainnetwork.com, your one-stop shop for Pittsburgh Steelers news and coverage. where you can check out not just some amazing articles and some great conversations within those articles, but you can also check out the audio only podcast for those that are tuning in on the YouTube side or anywhere else that they're catching this live. You can check out the audio only podcast, which includes mine, State of the Steelers, that airs out on Saturdays. Make sure you go and check that out. But the website, most importantly, up to the minute news. If there's breaking news to be happen, it's going to happen there first. And so let's get back into it. So the next position, I think that everybody's been looking at, and it's coming up free agency. The Steelers only have one, and that's the quarterback position. Nobody signed yet. Fields, Russell, they're still out there. I made a prediction a while ago that I don't think either one of these guys are going to be signed unless things don't fall into some sort of place, which tells me they have an idea of who they want. And it's just not one of these guys, whether it's Fields or Russ. I just have felt that if it was one of these quarterbacks, it's going to be done before free agency. I think it'd be foolish to allow a player that you think is going to be your starting quarterback for the upcoming year to go test the market and find himself a new home. So with that said, there's been a lot of people looking into the draft as a potential place for the Steelers to pick up players. Free agency is another one. Since we're talking about free agency, we'll start off there. David Carr has been the newest name to the list of a bunch. Derek Carr, that's right.
I like David too, but he's retired a long time ago.
Yes, that's true. Derek Carr, my mistake. He's been the newest name added to the long list of potential suspects when it comes to the future quarterback for the Pittsburgh Steelers. I'm not excited about it. Not excited about that one whatsoever. What are your thoughts on the potential Derek Carr changing from one black and gold uniform to another?
Well, honestly, Stafford's re-signed with the Rams.
Mm-hmm.
Based on what's left out there, I'd rather have Derek Carr than Russell Wilson.
Yeah.
I'd rather have Derek Carr than Sam Darnold. I'd rather have Derek Carr than – I mean, it's not a good quarterback market right now.
Mm-mm.
And there's even a couple guys you could try to trade for. Geno Smith, if they want to trade him. But they just ain't a lot. And, Derek Carr, he's had some, decent seasons. He, again, when he was with the Saints, he had more talent around him on offense than he would with Pittsburgh right now. But, again, the offseason's still to come.
Yeah.
But to me, if you're going to roll everything back, you're saying that it's not our coaching staff. It's not our schemes. It's our players, our talent. Okay, if that's the case, you roll back with the younger option, the Justin Fields. You build an offense around him with Smith, the offensive coordinator, and you improve the talent at the skill positions, which is desperately needed. And then you see what you have. You've got a 26-year-old guy that if he shows something, you sign him to a 2-3 year contract, you have some direction. If it doesn't pan out, then next offseason, they might be better options. There definitely will be in the draft. I don't know if you watched the combine, but the most exciting thing they had to talk about at quarterback was the fact that Sanders grew up around the pro game, and he could turn around programs because he turned around Jackson State and he turned around Colorado, supposedly. But this year could turn out just like the Kenny Pickett year. None of these guys are special.
Yeah.
Because those drills, that's some of the worst passes. They were missing guys. I mean, it was bad. What's his Brady Cook out of Missouri? Going back and looking at it and looking at the stats, he had the best day throwing the ball, and he's projected to be a fourth rounder?
Yeah.
So I would not get excited about any of these guys.
True. Yeah, I'm not excited either. Real quick, one question. How many starting quarterback jobs are there in the NFL?
32.
32. And so, this guy here says to me, dude, wrong. Fields wants to test the market with only 32 jobs in the NFL. If he's wanting to go and see what somebody else has to offer, and if the Steelers are offering him pole position or starting quarterback position, well, that's today. If he goes out there and checks the field tomorrow or check free agency, that offer may not be there for him when he comes back. The Steelers may have found somebody else or something else may have come up, i.e. Kenny Pickett last time. They wanted to have him here, yet Russell Wilson becomes available, and oh my God, there you go. Game plans change just as quick. So if this guy, if you have your guy, you're going to sign him. And if your guy is willing to test the open market, it's because he's already had contact from other people in the open market. And whether it's a starting position or money, he's already been offered more.
Well, I think that I'm sure Fields has had players say, hey, our team's really interested in you. Say it's the Giants, the Jets, who else is going to need a quarterback? The Saints, there's other teams. And I think it's a copycat league. When teams see the 4 quarterbacks that started in the Final Four, they see mobility, they see creative offense, they see RPOs, the things that Fields can do. There's a couple of quarterbacks in this rookie class that can do it, but none of them is as talented as Fields. Not athletically. Right. Now, whether they can read defenses and do things that he can't do, or he has not been able to show he can do. But again, I want to see him in a situation that he was behind the 8 ball in Chicago from the start. Comes to Pittsburgh, running Russell Wilson's offense. For a guy telling him, don't throw the Big G's talked about it, that on film, you'll see him see the throw, and he hesitated. And I believe, because I see Pickett do the same thing. I see different guys. I think it's just Tomlin in their head, don't throw over the middle, don't throw over the middle. You say, well, Mason Rudolph threw over the middle. What did Mason Rudolph have to lose? The Steelers wasn't given, they didn't care about him at all. He was done. He was the third option. They're like, we're going to play you. They was trying anything. Mm-hmm. And he went in there with nothing to lose, no pressure. And it surprised defenses because they're like, oh, he's throwing over the middle. He's actually throwing the ball. And he wasn't being handcuffed. When being at his best games under Canada and Tomlin at the end is when the fourth quarter he's like, screw it. We're playing my ball.
Yeah.
I mean, anybody's got to be able to see it if they've watched for the last 5 years. Tomlin has destroyed this offense because of his ultra conservative and protect the football mindset. So whoever comes here is going to have to get past that.
Yeah.
But I'm hoping that if you keep a guy like Fields, if you're going to roll it back with somebody with experience dealing with this crap, put in some RPOs where he can do some safer passes and maybe start to develop something. But even then, you got to leave him alone. You can't bring in a guy and then take him out week 3 or week 4. You got to see if he can develop and do anything.
No, and I get it. And Craig also comes in saying, if the Steelers are lowballing Fields and Fields has this and that. And I get it. He does. But if the Steelers are lowballing Fields, it's because he's not their guy. Let's be honest. If he was their guy, they wouldn't be lowballing him. What is Fields worth? He's worth a 6th-round pick. That's all the Steelers paid for him. There was other teams that had availability to him. What did he do this year? He won 4 games, lost 2. Was it really him winning the 4 games, or was it the defense at the time winning the 4 games? Because I am sure that I was ready to see what Russ had at the end of that 4-2 record, because to me, passing the ball, it didn't look that good when it came to Justin Fields. I'm just being honest. And the Steelers had him the entire year. They could have put him in at any time. All they would have given up was a 4th-round pick. It's not like they would have given up the future or throwing in the entire bag. For the Steelers not to be willing to give up a 4th-round pick for him and just kind of keep it there as a 6th-round pick, still not sign him at this point, I'm just saying the signs aren't there. I'm not saying he's not going to be there, but signs aren't there for me.
The Eagles won 4 games last year where they ran for more yards than they threw for yards.
Mhm.
They had A.J. Brown just wanting to quit, reading a book on the sidelines.
That's
He
true.
was not happy. They're the champions. I mean, I don't care how you win. I want you to win. And if it means that you have to be able to do both, and when they needed to do both in the Super Bowl, they did. And
Mhm.
Brown got his, and Smith and different guys got theirs. But what I'm saying is it's a balancing act. But the Steelers are top heavy in every aspect.
Mhm.
And there is no free agent quarterback you can bring in that I have more faith to do any more than Fields, especially that they're going to be coming into a totally new offense. Tomlin will have no faith in them. He's going to handcuff them even worse. They're going to have to learn Smith's system. I, I don't know who to bring in. I really don't. And I don't see anybody draftable that can play this year. You can bring in somebody to try to develop them.
Right.
But who are we seeing in the draft? Are like, okay, he might start late in the season. I don't see it.
I don't know. I don't know. I mean, you never plan for that. No, Tomlin doesn't plan for a quarterback change or anybody to change due to failure. Craig says that 93.7 the fan said that Fields' agent wants him to test the market. And I think Russ's agent said that it was after the Cincinnati Bengals game where they told him they couldn't change the plays. I mean, agents and people that are saying things back and forth are going to try to make their player look in the best light. You can take
You
that for
don't
what it
think that
is, but
you don't think Fields is betting on himself?
at
And
this
listen, if I was Fields and I believed in myself and I knew my talent and I knew the crap teams I'd played for, and that's what it's been. Crap teams and crap offenses and crap coaches, if you ask me. But we'll stop there. If I was him, I would be, I'm going to see what is out there, who is really interested in me. And I would gamble on myself.
well,
Now, if the Steelers want to come in and say, well, we'll give you $20 million a year, that's where I would start with my
right, but I mean,
negotiation.
are you really gambling yourself? What if the Jets say, yeah, we'll give you 20 million a year also, and then go out and draft Shadir Sanders and he's number one and he's your starting quarterback? I mean, if you're going to bet on yourself, you're going to go to the place that's offering you pole position. Whether it's only for a year or for 2 years, that's the real bet on yourself. Whoever's giving you the starting gig, whoever's giving you an opportunity to show that you can be the starting quarterback. But I'm not saying that Justin Fields doesn't have the ability or he's incapable of or doesn't have the talent. What I'm saying is that the Pittsburgh Steelers, based on their actions, to me, aren't showing that they believe that. They didn't play him the entire year. They benched him as soon as Russ came back. And even when Russ was struggling, right, no, and I get it, but even when Russ was struggling at his most, they still continue to keep him out. They haven't re-signed him. You know, they at least have allowed him to talk to, from, in my opinion, to other teams because these rumors about the Jets and these players and all these things all came after the fact that he said he wanted to come back and play for one offensive coordinator and you know, for once, you know, play 2 years in a row under the same offense. You know, you don't go and start, you know, tinkering and tankering about what other teams are going to be giving you and offering you if you're not getting a solidified answer from the person that you're wanting to go to the dance with. You get what I'm saying? So
Yeah,
to
I think
me,
that
if they're going to bet for himself, it's definitely with the Steelers because that's if they offered him pole position. Now, if they're not, and they're saying
I think
back
it's
up.
gambling. I think he's rolling the dice, doing another spin, whatever you want to compare it to.
Mhm.
Now, what is that smart? I mean, I don't know. But I think he looks at the talent out there, and then he looks at himself, and he's like, somebody. I mean, even if he doesn't sign, and the Jets or whoever, Giants, whatever, offer him more,
Mhm.
um, who's to say? Because we know the Steelers ain't getting Ward or Sanders. It would be the only 2 quarterbacks in this class that I think would have any chance of starting over Fields at any point this year. And
I
I
agree.
don't even know if they will, if they were on the same team.
I
But
agree.
if who's the Steelers going to get? I mean, they're going to have to bring in a free agent.
Mhm.
And so he might, play it for the first 3 or 4 days of free agency. And then the Steelers finally say, hey, I'm willing to give you that 20 million or 25 million that Sean thinks he'll get. So, I mean, I think the Steelers are gambling. I think he's gambling. And
Yeah, that's a
we'll
big
see who's going
gamble.
to lose.
I mean, that's a big gamble to wait 3-4 days, and then he says, "No, I'm going to go with the Jets," and then backup plan B goes with the Raiders, and then backup plan C goes with somebody else, and now you're with plan 4, which is the guy that's on the team now. And you put yourself in a bind. I just don't see that being like, to me. Like I said, I'm not saying that he's incapable, that the talent isn't there. I wholeheartedly do. I think that's the case. I just don't think the Steelers see that. And it's just based on what they're doing and how they're acting. I felt that, and hey, they could just be waiting it out until the start of free agency. I think Wednesday, somebody said it was his birthday, Justin Fields. Maybe that's going to be when they announce it. That's quite possible. My thing is, if Justin Fields hits free agency and he ends up back with the Steelers, he wasn't choice number one.
I wish that they would get it done. We've talked about it. I've wanted it done so they can focus, because it'll tell them what kind of running game they're going to have, what kind of receivers they need. It's going to answer a lot if it's Fields versus somebody else.
Well, the fact that it's to everybody else, it's pretty apparent that that's the first step that needs to be done. And since it's not done, and we're like a few days away from free agency,
it's the quarterback. But if you look at
you're there?
Yeah, I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know if I'm freezing up or what's going on.
Oh, sorry about that. I think we both paused at the same time.
If they don't, Big Ben said it on his podcast. I think it was 2 weeks ago. Used to, teams, a lot of players wanted to come to Pittsburgh. It was, that was the destination. We want to play for the Steelers because they win. There was an aura, a culture. But they didn't, because the Steelers didn't pay. They didn't have the money to bring in the big, high-priced free agents. So that's why when the Steelers got them, they were older. And it cost as much. But like Ben said, it's not that way anymore. Players ain't just dying to come to Pittsburgh. They might want to come and play for Tomlin. But what offensive player wants to come and play in that offense?
Nah, they're trying to leave.
Not the top guys. I mean, that's the truth.
Yeah, we got players trying to leave. They're not trying to get here.
Yep.
On the offensive side. Yeah, no, and you're absolutely right. And and like I said, I'm not pulling one way or another. I'm going to pull for whoever the quarterback is. My thought is I just don't see the Steelers seeing it this way. I think that they have an idea of where they're going to go. And if who, I mean, that's the other thing too. You just mentioned it, right? Like, look at the draft class, look at the free agency class. There's not that much out there. If the Steelers were to offer Justin Fields, pole position and say, we want to sign you for the next 2 years, I mean, that's the biggest bet on yourself. Plus, you're betting on yourself against all these other quarterbacks that we just mentioned that we think aren't as good as Fields. I just don't see why he wouldn't be signing on that dotted line immediately if that's what the case was.
Maybe they're trying to negotiate incentives. Let's say they offer 20, but if he starts and he meets this number, he meets that number, he gets more. And then then the deal that year 2 would go to 25. I mean, there is ways to do this. And with the money they have, the space, and the cap continually going up, it should be a no-brainer. So I'm like you. I don't know the reasoning. I don't know if it's because he's not their number one choice, or if this is just, a little bit of playing chicken.
Yeah.
But I don't like it, and I want him to get this done.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree with you. I would have wanted this to be done immediately. That way, if there's any players out there that are looking at Pittsburgh as a possible spot, even in the trade market, I mean, trading could have happened already. It's possible. It's not finalized until the new year starts over or free agency goes through, but it's already here. A receiver looking to come to Pittsburgh or any of those things are what you're hoping for. And a quarterback is the first step. Plus, I think the Steelers cost themselves some money. Had they tried to sign, let's just say Fields is the option, and that's where they're going to go. I thought, had they signed him before it was set in stone how much the cap was going to be increased to, I think they probably get him less. Because there was no unknown, and so to me, that's just another domino added either to a mistake that they didn't make, or the fact that they're just not looking in that direction. And I just strongly feel they're not looking in that direction.
Yeah, like I said, I wish it would have already been done. Regardless, there's a real danger they've cost themselves some money, and it'll end up benefiting Fields one way or the other. But we'll just have to see. It's like dominoes. That has got to fall before we can see what's going to happen.
I agree. And the only other thing that might happen might be on the defensive side, and this will be the last thing we talk about, is the cornerback position. A lot of folks have been looking at free agency. There was a little bit of some rumor, some smoke, so to speak, where the Steelers might be interested in trading for a cornerback out of Green Bay. Oh gosh, what was his name?
Alexander.
Yes. I'd be down for that. He's a really good cornerback. I would be down for a trade depending on what that looks like. But free agency wise, top of the list, you have DJ Reed, Shavarius Ward, Carlton Davis, Jonathan Jones, Brian Murphy. You got some names up here, and some guys that aren't up there too high in age. It's not like the wide receiver position where everybody's over the age of 30. You have some guys that are underneath there. I think this might be where the Steelers spend their money, is in the cornerback room, given the options that are available that are out there. What are your thoughts on the cornerback room and how they're going to be addressed this year?
Yeah, I think I want to believe in Corey Trice. And I'm hoping this is the year that he puts it all together, stays healthy. They use him correctly. Him and Porter. You have some pieces there. Jackson's back. Beanie Bishop's back. But there's some quality veterans, as you just mentioned. DJ Reed, he hit today. The Jets are going to let him be a free agent.
Mm-hmm.
You said Byron Murphy and Davis and just different guys. All of them would be upgrades. And, see, therein lies the problem I have with Terrell Austin's defense, is that he plays that off man 4 or 5 yards off. They don't bump much. They don't, engage at the line to give the pass rush time to get there. But again, they're not getting the pass rush because they're only rushing 4 people. So you either got to get more pass rush and commit more to that and play the softer, I call it a zone behind it. They call that soft man. I hate it. Either commit or don't. Crap or get off the pot. And they irritate me doing that. But they need to upgrade the secondary, no doubt. I'm very concerned about Minkah Fitzpatrick. He's had 2 very average seasons in a row and below average for him. But I'm just saying he's an average safety right now. So, but there's a couple of guys in the draft that they can bring in, because you got Deshaun Elliott. He had an excellent year.
Mm-hmm.
He had the lowest missed tackle rate since PFF started tracking him. So that dude played excellent, and I'm happy with him. But I never thought I'd be saying this, but Fitzpatrick, I think there's a problem. 1 year is a bad year. 2 years is a trend. Something needs to happen. But I agree. I think they'll spend their money there. Linebacker, they kind of addressed last year. And defensive line, I like that young man out of the Eagles. I think it's Williams.
Mm-hmm.
But again, he's a spot player. He comes in, to fill in for Davis or for Carter on the interior. So you know what I'm saying? He play, he goes all out, 110 for 12 plays, 50 plays a game. what's he going to be like a full-time starter? So, but man, Daniel, this is a deep class at the defensive tackle.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm very excited about some of these guys. Ty Robertson from Nebraska come in. He would look like he reminds me of Aaron Smith, but more athletic.
Mm-hmm.
And he come in at 288 pounds and ran the fastest 40 of any of the defensive linemen. And he usually plays over 300. He lost weight to run fast. But watch that kid. And you'll get excited. Alexander, there's just different guys that I think would really upgrade this Steeler defense.
Oh yeah, yeah. I've been looking at the defensive side. There's a couple of kids out of Michigan on the defensive side that I would.
Oh yeah. Mason Graham, I think, is the number 1 rated defensive tackle. To me, he's a little bit smaller.
Hmm.
I'm a little bit more of a fan of Ty Robertson because, one, he'll get drafted later.
Yeah.
I think Graham will be a first-round guy.
Mm-hmm.
But the other young man from Michigan, he didn't work out. He's a monster. Kenneth
Grant.
He's a monster.
Yeah, that's the one I want.
Yeah. So I'd rather have Grant than I would Graham.
I agree. I'm hoping they get Grant. That he's 6'3", 300 some plus pounds, and can move, man.
Yeah.
The guy, he was running down running backs, applying pressure onto the back to the quarterback. You know, when you have a team that only uses 4 for pressure, and you need to get back there quickly, you need a guy like this. I'm not gonna lie. Like I just feel that this guy is gonna. He screams Hardgrave to me, a bigger Hardgrave, which is, I mean, if you can get Hardgrave, but more size,
Hardgrave's out there.
He is out there too. He's going to be out there in free agency.
Would he want to come back to the black and gold for, I mean, he's not what he once was, but he's still an upgrade over Ogunjobi or Benton at this point.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. And I'm excited about the defensive line. I think they're going to double dip in that position. I think that's been one of the deals that everybody's been kind of hinting towards. I don't necessarily think it's going to be 2 guys in the top 4 rounds, but I do think that, this is probably going to be a group that, or at least 2 of them, throughout the entire draft. I just think that there's still a few holes there. Wide receiver is a big hole that I think the Steelers are going to have to fill in. Running back is another hole that the Steelers are going to fill in, I think, in the draft, in the middle rounds there, 2nd or 3rd round. And you only have so many of those. So, but coming in with a
good options, though.
Yes.
In this draft, at running back.
Oh, yeah.
For the zone runners with vision that the Steelers need.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
What do you think about Nick Chubb? Everybody keeps talking about Nick Chubb. I mean, you're talking about a guy a year removed. He made the comeback, but he wasn't the same.
Right.
But usually that second year, fully healthy, you'll see what he is capable of getting back to. At one point, I thought he was the best running back in football. I love his attitude. It would, if the price is right.
Yeah, I would. I'd put out a feeler on it, see what it is. 3 point. I think it was a 3.3, 3.4 yards per carry last year. Still, I mean, it's not the greatest, but he still ran with some burst and some push. I think towards the end of the season, he started to get a little bit more in tune with who he was. Another off season. Yeah, I think so. I mean, he had just as much of a gruesome injury as Cole Holcomb did. And Holcomb, he didn't return back to the field last year. So that kind of just tells you something there. I would say I'd throw out a feeler, see how healthy he is, see if he's got that burst back, because he is definitely a game changer. His vision, his burst through when he sees or his decision making, and his decisiveness when he makes those decisions is what really puts him apart, in my opinion. Is because, I mean, when you have that much power and speed and then you make the right choice constantly and you make it as quickly as he does, it is he's an impressive back. I definitely would be interested I just think that Steelers are probably going to want to go younger, and I think they're looking for a home run hitter, somebody that can
Oh, definitely.
can
What
take
I'm
the
saying
distance.
is we were talking about double dipping.
Oh yes,
I
yes.
think defensive tackle, you might draft two of them.
Oh yeah,
But wide receiver, probably free agent and a draft pick.
yeah,
Running back, you could draft a kid. I like Hampton out of North Carolina. I like Tootin out of Virginia Tech. That kid can fly.
yeah.
Johnson out of Iowa. There's some great options for zone runners. And then you have a veteran that you can use because there's always injuries in that room.
Oh yeah. I mean, I'd definitely take Nick Chubb over Cordell Patterson any day of the week and twice on Sunday. So you won't have to you won't be pulling teeth for me on that one. Yeah, if he's just a guy in the room and he's not expecting to have that workload that he had prior to the injury. Yeah, throw it out there, bring him in. I
Well,
mean,
if things go according to plan, well, the Steelers want to run the ball. They run it as much as anybody this year.
yeah,
They wasn't successful, but they run it as much as anybody. So if you're wanting to prove it, a 1 year prove it deal, you go to a place like Pittsburgh. If you think that line and that offense is committed and showing improvement, and then you prove yourself, and then you get a better deal.
yeah, yeah, it's possible, definitely. But well, the running back position just has such a short life, shelf there. Um, Even him coming back to prove it for a little bit, he's going to be another year. Those type of things happen. Yeah, but I'd put a feeler out there. I'd bring him on there. Like I said, it don't hurt, and I'd rather. I think I would trust Chubb over Patterson or some of the other guys that the Steelers may have brought in. Jonathan Ward, I think, was another guy that saw some time in the backfield. Those guys. So obviously, 100% over those guys. The Steelers had this Death Star, and I put that in quotations because I don't think we ever really saw it. But I mean, if you throw out Jalen Warren out there and a Nick Chubb and another running back that's explosive with a mobile quarterback, you can still run something very similar. I mean, that would be a very threatening formation still with just those pieces and not knowing the other two.
Oh yeah, and when you're a team in the situation the Steelers are in, at this point, again, until you know who the quarterback's going to be or who's the initial, as you say, pole position guy.
Yeah.
You really are not totally sure about the offense. With the draft, I'd like to see if the Steelers go offensive line and it's the right guy and they get an opportunity like a David DeCastro opportunity where a guy falls in your lap. Hey, pull the trigger because the line has got to finally gel, be used correctly, and improve this year. I mean, it has to because there's just too much. There's too much at stake right now for to have the subpar performances we've been getting the last few years.
Yeah, it's all going to fall down on something, right? I mean, is it the players? Yep. Is it the coaching? This is going to be probably Pat Meyer's last opportunity to show that it's not him. I would hope. Let's hope.
Yeah. Prove it or lose it. Yeah.
Exactly. Either come in and prove it, or if not, then let's move on. Because and they're putting all the eggs in Broderick going all to the left side. Falatano's coming back on the right side. They got a good core there. They have Frazier, who is probably, should have been picked in the first round. I'm sure that if they could redo that draft, somebody's picking Frazier in the first round. So you have some players that are potentially, that were very high draft picks, 2 first-round tackles, a second-round center. You have Isaac Seumalo, who's still coming back. Last year he had that pec injury early on. How much did that affect him that entire year? Did it nag him the entire year? And if it, because he did have a down year and maybe perhaps an off season healthy, he could come back and be very strong this year. It's a contract year for him, from what I understand. And so, Steelers that offensive line should be in much better position than they have been in the past couple of years.
Playing next to Dan Moore Jr. will make anybody's job look tougher. I'm just telling you. There's a cohesiveness on the line, and it's like a hand, 5 fingers.
Yeah.
And if you've got a weak spot, you got a broke digit, it's going to impact the fingers next to it. And Dan Moore, and then having Jones on the other side out of position at times, he looked like a lost ball in high weeds. I mean, it was ridiculous. The tackle play, the Steelers tackles led the NFL in sacks allowed.
Ooh.
Now think about that. Our left tackle and our right tackle led the league in sacks allowed. That's not good.
That's not, and that's got to change. It's got to change, and hopefully this year it's going to be changing for the better. Whoever's going to be lining up in the quarterback position is sure going to be hoping for that. I know I will be. Any final words for everybody before we let everybody go there, Shannon?
I'm always encouraged by our community. We have such knowledgeable community members who keep up with this, and they follow along, and they're always ready to ask the right questions. They're paying attention to the options, the opportunities out there, and it makes our job so much easier. And many times they say things, and I'm like, well, I hadn't even thought about it that way. And maybe I need to look at this, and because we can all learn something. And I enjoy this time of year. I'll be honest. This is so much more fun for me than the 5-game losing streak at the end of the season. Well, it's so much more fun for me than trying to explain why the Steelers offense is so anemic and why they get out coached each week. And I mean, all that stuff is so irritating because we see what needs to be done, but the organization won't do it. So when we get to this point in the offseason and we're talking about possibilities, we can at least be positive that we can see positive changes and start to see this thing get turned around. And I really enjoy that. I enjoy, it's like Christmas. Now the combine give us a glimpse of some more. Hopefully presents the Steelers get to open after the draft.
Oh yeah. That's a little peek into the present. You don't know whose name is on the present yet, but you get to look into them and hope and pray that the team, the players that you're wanting end up getting selected by the team that you're hoping for. It is an optimistic time. This is when every team is 0-0 and everybody's team is getting better, including our own, the Pittsburgh Steelers. And I'm excited. I am free agency right up on the corner. I'm excited. I can't wait for that first domino to drop. The quarterback position, so that we can finally stop trying to, what's the word I'm looking? Speculate as far as who's going to join the team based off of a whole bunch of other speculations. It's the biggest piece to drop, and we'll find out here soon. I know that for a fact. Well, I appreciate everybody that's been tuning in. Thank you guys. Please give us a 5-star rating if you're listening to this on Apple or anywhere else that gives you ratings. Like and subscribe if you're on anything live. That being said, please take us out, man.